Van Helsing takes a piece of host and he goes to bless her with it, and he puts it on her forehead and it burns her. All the men go to Carfax, purify it, make it so that Dracula cannot retreat into any of the boxes. And so the only thing left is the one box that is missing. 49 out of 50, still doing pretty well. As they try to close in on him, Dracula runs and then he jumps out a window. He then runs into the stable and then presumably leaves out the back door. Everyone's gonna go to Varna. They got some vampire hunting to do. Hello world, welcome back to my Dracula vlogs. For the final time, we are on vlog number 9, the last installment of the book and this video series. It is absolutely pouring rain, gray, cloudy, about 60 degrees, so it is like perfect Halloween, fall, spooky, vampire-y weather. You know I got my candy corn. We're gonna see everything wrap up today. What happens to our heroes? Our gang of vampire hunters. Will they succeed? What are their travels gonna entail? What obstacles will they face on the road? And then at the end we'll wrap up with some final thoughts on the book as a whole. I've had a lot of fun both rereading and just talking through the book. So it's certainly bittersweet that we've come to the end, but there is still plenty left. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Chapter 25 begins with Seward talking about Mina's change in behavior, particularly at sunrise and sunset. In the last installment, I talked about how Seward and Van Helsing had noticed that her behavior had changed, she's getting quieter, and so they've decided to keep her out of the loop. And now Seward has picked up on the fact that at sunrise and sunset, she seems to be back to normal. She acts like the old Mina and seems to have some freedom, as he describes it. As the group prepares to embark on their journey to hunt down the Count, it's time to take any final measures and get things in order. And so Mina sits everybody down and basically makes them promise that if along their journey, whether things go wrong or it's just a natural progression of her condition takes place, or if being so close to Dracula's homeland does something to her, no matter the case, if she takes a turn and becomes more vampire than Mina, and they have to do what they have to do, she makes them promise that they will be able to take the necessary course of action. With heavy hearts, Quincy, Van Helsing, Seward, and Arthur all agree. Of course, Jonathan is hesitant, but Mina brings up the whole Arthur and Lucy thing, saying that not only does he need to promise that he'll allow the action to take place, but he needs to be the one to do it because she wants her soul to be saved by the person who loves her most. I've already mentioned before that I feel like this is way too harsh, but he agrees. She then has Jonathan read a burial service for her. I assume this is something along the lines similar to like last rites or the traditional script at the time for a burial service. It's very sad. Everybody sits there together as Jonathan reads. Seward remarks in his diary that he chokes up, and it's just a very dour moment with them all facing the reality that they may not succeed. Mina may not get out of this without becoming a vampire. And just the fact that they may not, all of them, may survive the trip. The group officially leaves London on October 12th, and they arrive in Varna, which is again in Bulgaria, on October 15th. Mina is sleeping throughout most of the day. At sunrise and sunset, every day Van Helsing is hypnotizing her, just keeping tabs on Dracula, and every time he does so, she just reports that the standard hearing the waves, feeling the boat, so nothing's really changed there. Arthur has set it up that he gets a telegram delivered to him every single day, noting if the boat has reached its destination or not. So just in case it does get there sooner than expected, he'll be notified. But he makes sure, though it hasn't arrived yet, he's still getting the telegram as proof that someone is keeping track of it. I don't know how they know in the old times. I assume he told somebody where his final destination was going to be, but how they know exactly how to deliver it to them in each step of the journey. But it works. And their hope is that they will arrive in Varna well before the ship, that it will arrive at some point between sunrise and sunset at the times of day where Dracula doesn't have his full powers. It's also the time where he won't be able to move over water. He can't escape on his own. He'll need somebody to carry the box out. So their plan is, as soon as the ship pulls into port, to get on it right away to get to the box. And they just hope and pray that it doesn't come in the middle of the night. Arthur has already told people in charge of the boat in Varna he believes that there is something in the box that was stolen from him, so that way they will have permission to get on the boat, inspect the box, and an excuse. Seward and Van Helsing will take care of the box and Dracula, making sure that the rose is placed on it so he can't get out. Arthur, Quincy, and Jonathan will defend them and keep any spectators at bay, or if anybody tries to stop them, to keep them from interfering. They should be able to get the box to an isolated location so that there are no witnesses. But Van Helsing even tells them that because Dracula is so old, after they have taken care of him, he should turn to dust. So there will be no body, no crime. Arthur gets a telegram that the ship has been spotted passing through the Dardanelles, which is a strait in Turkey. So basically that means she's a comin'. Seward updates his diary, and he is salty that he has to write and can't just speak aloud because obviously he doesn't have his phonograph and all his equipment with him. He notes that him and Van Helsing are still suspicious of Mina, keeping tabs as much as possible on her behavior, but they haven't mentioned this to anybody else. They know that if Jonathan found out, that he would just be heartbroken. I get it in the sense of nothing has happened yet. It's more precautionary, and I am glad that they are being more proactive, but it's also one of those things where you wouldn't want anybody else to be off their guard. I just feel like it's something everyone needs to be aware of. Although, that also being said, everybody should be on guard anyway, anticipating what could be happening. Van Helsing in particular is keeping an eye on Mina's teeth. Make sure they're not getting super bitey. We reach the night before they anticipate the ship arriving. Everyone is buzzing with excitement, eagerness to get it done, a little bit of anxiety, but full of emotion, except Jonathan, who Seward describes as sitting in a corner with cold eyes, sharpening his knife. It's getting to him. We jump to a few days later, and the ship still hasn't come into port, which is a bit concerning, but they know that it's still traveling because of Mina's hypnosis, so everyone just assumes that due to fog or different weather circumstances, the ship has been delayed and is kind of just bobbing off in the water somewhere. And then a telegram arrives telling Arthur that the ship has come into port in Galat, Romania. Now, I don't know if any of you out there are big geography buffs, but Bulgaria is not Romania. They have been duped, bamboozled, thrown through a loop. The Count has tricked them once again. Everyone was already anticipating something to happen, worried that something was going to go wrong, so they're not completely surprised, but it is a really big blow. They are miles away. Obviously, transportation is very limited at this time. They can't just run out and get the Count off the boat. They don't even know how they're going to get to him at all. Everyone is very sad, very unnerved. Again, except Jonathan Harker, who apparently this time smiling while he sharpens his knife. I'm kind of here for Jonathan's unhinged era, I gotta say. Van Helsing wonders aloud when the next train from Varna to Galatz is, and Mina answers immediately. There's how the hell do you know that? And it's kind of a cool callback because earlier on in the book, when Van Helsing had first met Mina, she mentioned to him that she was able to quickly tell him the train times between London and Exeter, where that Harker's home was, And she explained to him then that she really likes to stay knowledgeable about train times, specifically to help Jonathan out when he's traveling. And so this has already been established as something that she likes to do and keep up with, so it makes sense. It's very convenient, but at least Stoker has backed it up this time. She calls herself a train fiend. She likes knowing train schedules, and at this time in particular, she thought it would be helpful for them to know all the different routes to get to the castle. And I think Van Helsing speaks for us all when he calls her a wonderful woman. Then Van Helsing assigns everybody their jobs. Arthur is going to get tickets. Jonathan is going to go speak with an agent about them being able to board the ship. Quincy is going to go to the consulate's office and talk to the vice consul. And then Seward, Van Helsing, and Mina are going to stay back and hold down the fort. Mina says she feels excited. She feels freer. They got a new plan now. They got some steps they're going to take. She's invigorated by it. Jonathan, Arthur, and Quincy are all very happy to hear this because, again, she's kind of seeming back to normal. And they're happy that she's able to be cheerful with all this going on. Seward and Van Helsing, on the other hand, are even more suspicious, and they are giving each other the side eye from across the room. Everybody else leaves, and so it's just the three of them hanging back, and Van Helsing asks Mina to go get their copies of Jonathan's journal so they can look it over to gain some information, and she does so. And it's a really funny moment because as soon as she leaves, Van Helsing whips around to Seward, and he says, "We mean the same, speak out." Hey, Mina, can you go get Jonathan's journal from the safe? It would be so helpful. Thank you. You're the best. Thanks so much. Oh my god, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Oh, you already know I'm thinking what you're thinking. And they are both just very worried about Mina's energy. I mean, they were suspicious when she was lethargic and sleeping, and now they're suspicious when she has more energy. So I don't know what the hell they want her to be acting like. But on the other hand, this change of direction indicates that Dracula had suspicions, at least, that they were going to come after him, and so he potentially may be spying on them, and they just hope that he underestimates their ability to chase after him. Mina comes back, and Van Helsing launches into this page-long explanation, more like a soliloquy, trying to explain Dracula's behavior. I'll just try to hit all the main points. He didn't see, you didn't see, I didn't even see until just now that elements in nature are at rest, and then when they touch, poof, flash of light. And have you ever studied crime? Criminals don't have man brains. They have child brains. Little bird, little fish, little... To quote Archimedes, give me a fulcrum and I shall move the world. He does the same thing every time, just as he's done before. If none of that made a lick of sense, I'm going to tell you that reading the entire page worth doesn't really help. But somehow Mina understood it because she apparently lights up and claps. Van Helsing's like, oh, like, go on. Tell me what you're thinking. And so she explains, the Count is a criminal who has a pattern of behavior, and he defaults to that habit when he is being pursued. And so because they reviewed Jonathan's journal entries from when he was in the castle, and particularly a part where the Count explains a prior battle he had and retreated back to his homeland. So therefore they can assume that he ventured into London, tried to invade, tried to conquer it, basically, failed to do that, and so now he's just retreating home, and he's gonna recuperate and maybe take another few hundred years to plan another attack. And like, if you really think about it, I guess we don't know how many other people Dracula turned or bit or whatever, because we're only following this one group of people who knows Lucy. He really didn't do much. I mean, of all the people in London, we don't even hear about any other incidents. I feel like that would have made the book a bit more interesting and definitely would have raised the stakes. So Van Helsing praises Mina. He calls her very clever and urges her to keep going, keep following this line of thought. And Mina actually remarks that she's hesitant to keep going because she doesn't want to seem egotistical and like a know-it-all. And it's like, honey, you are one of two people in this group who has functioning brain cells. Be proud, girl. Speak out. So then she reasons that because the Count is worried about them following him, he's going to cut back on their connection. And so that's why she's felt more energetic and more free, because he's trying to keep her at bay. And Van Helsing ends chapter 25 saying that he hopes Dracula's hubris will be his downfall and will cause him to be at ease and think he has won and not be so on guard throughout the rest of his trip up to the castle. And then they'll be able to take advantage of this. Chapter 25 begins on October 29th, which is today. That's pretty cool. Van Helsing hypnotizes Mina, but it's harder than usual, probably because the connection being weakened on Dracula's end. The ship has officially stopped, and Mina actually mimics Dracula, like, getting out of his box. Van Helsing explains that just because the ship is at port, it needs to be, it would need to be actually, like, physically touching land for Dracula to be able to move off of it until, like, at nighttime he could get out and walk around, but he has to wait until somebody carries the box off the ship. The next time he hypnotizes Mina, she reports that she can hear sounds of people moving around on the boat. She does feel that connection weakening. On October 30th, the group has now reached Galatz. They are able to meet up with the captain of the ship and talk with him about his journey. He tells them that they were able to travel pretty faster than usual, and there's even a point where the crew wanted to throw the box overboard. One man came to remove the box on behalf of Count Dracula, so they go to talk to him. He tells them that there was a second man who took the box from him, and then it actually turns out that that second man is found dead. This leaves them in a tight spot because now the trail has gone cold. Dracula tied up that loose end, and they have absolutely no idea where he has gone, how he left the city, what route he's taking, etc. And so Mina gets to work. She looks over notes and papers, and she figures something out. And then the following is told throughout her bullets in her journal, and it reminds me of the scene from Brooklyn Nine-Nine where they're stuck and they need to get back to Brooklyn, and Amy, like, goes on this whole rapid fire speaking explanation of how different, like, travel schedules and times and how they can make it back in a day. And everyone's just watching in amazement.
Thanks to a loophole in H.R. 377551, police officers are allowed to commandeer any plane in the interest of national security. The crop duster will land at an airstrip outside of Finksburg, Maryland. We take a cab to Baltimore, jump on the 6:40 a.m. train to New York, arriving at 9:26. Head from there, it's a 29-minute cab ride to One Police Plaza. You change on the way and we should get to your meeting with 5 minutes to spare.
So here we go. Number one, they know. Dracula needs to be taken. He can't travel on his own. He's afraid of being discovered. He can only change forms in certain times. So it's not like he can go from bat to dog to fog, throughout the day. So he doesn't want to be discovered, and he doesn't want to get trapped in any way. It's safe to assume that he is just going to stay in his box and have somebody transport him. That way he also has somebody guarding him at all times. So then number two, how is he being taken? Option A, roads. That's risky. There'll be other people on the road. There'll be customs agents they need to watch out for. It's also very easy to follow. So then option B, train. Train is also hard, also easy to follow. Limited ways that the train could travel. So if you need to take a quick detour, change plans, can't really do that on train. Also, trains have delays, which brings her to option C, boat. Boat is also risky, but also has limited travel. But from her recent spying, she knows that he has been on a boat at some point recently, so it's safe to assume he'll just stay on there. Boat harder to track, harder to catch up with. Boat needs a crew, so he'll have people around him guarding him and making sure the box gets where it needs to be. But without the added risk of anybody else, there probably won't be as many people on the river as on the road. She also reasons that after they ambushed him in Piccadilly, he knew that he had to lose the trail. And so he set up from London the deception of making it seem like the boat was going to go to Varna, but instead taking it to Galatz. Deciding boat is the best option, she examines the different rivers that could be taken, taking into consideration which river would be best for locals to travel, so the people who are going to be actually maneuvering him there and watching over his box, to the things that she's heard while in her hypnosis trances. So that narrows it down to two different rivers, Pruth and the Sereth. And the Pruth is easier to navigate, but the Sereth will bring him closer to the castle. Based upon her expert deductions, she's come to the conclusion that Dracula is traveling by boat on the Sereth River. And she presents all these findings to the squad. And everyone is so happy, excited. They all shake her hand. And they are just absolutely ecstatic that Mina has figured this all out and has given them next steps, given them a plan to work with. Could you imagine if they left her back in London?
Idiots.
Would I fight Dracula for Mina Harker? Absolutely. Would I fight Dracula for people I know in real life? Probably not all. And to those people I know in real life, I say, be more confident. Dracula will probably stay in the box and not try to risk coming out even at night, because if anybody sees him or knows what they're carrying, they're gonna throw him overboard, which is a funny image to think about. Now it's time to narrow things down and figure out individual tasks. Arthur, with his connections and his title and his money, are going to secure them a boat to follow Dracula on. Quincy, ever the cowboy, is going to ride on horseback along the way of the river, just in case Dracula does make his way off the water, especially if he figures out he's being pursued on the river, tries to escape on land. Also, at some point, he's going to have to get off the river to get up to the castle. Seward says that he's going to accompany Quincy because they don't want anybody to be alone on their individual journey. Everyone's going to use the buddy system, and they're besties. Jonathan is now torn because on the one hand, he wants to stay with Mina, but on the other hand, he wants to be the one to do the staking. Van Helsing encourages him to go with Arthur, reasoning that he's young, he can fight, Van Helsing really can't. Also, he should be the one to put an end to Dracula based on everything he did to him, and also Mina. While the rest of the group goes by boat and by land, Van Helsing and Mina will make their way to Dracula's castle. They're gonna sanctify it, which is an absolutely stellar idea. It's being proactive about things, making sure that just in case the two groups fail and aren't able to stop Dracula from getting up to the castle, that when he gets there, he can't rest. But Jonathan is very mad about this, at the idea of Mina even coming close to it, and talks about the horrors of the castle. And again, I get that this is all stemming from what Harker experienced, and he's basically like, you don't know what's in there, you don't know what horrors that you're gonna face. But he also says, have you felt the vampire's lips upon your throat? And like, Van Helsing hasn't, but Mina has. Like, she's already been through the ringer. Like, at this point, you've got to do what you've got to do to stop Dracula. And so Van Helsing explains to him how important this is. And says, you know, if Dracula escapes them and he goes back to the castle and it's not purified and he can just rest there, he could be there for centuries and just never come back out. And then Mina's doomed. So what's the better option here? Plus, they have those 3 other vampire ladies that he wrote about, and they gotta put an end to them too. And so Jonathan relents, but is still very emotionally affected by it. Arthur and Quincy set everything up, and Mina, in her journal, writes about how glad she is that they're rich and that they've made rich friends. And honestly, yeah, if they didn't have these connections, they would be screwed. Then everyone prepares boats, prepares the horses, prepares all the travel plans, and they bid an emotional farewell to each other. And it's a deep moment because this group has obviously bonded through trauma, have stuck together. Now they're all going separate ways. They don't know if they'll see each other again. They don't know if they'll all make it out of this or what the end result is going to be. And with that, the gang splits up, taking their 3 separate courses of action. Jonathan and Arthur start their boat down the Severn. Quincy and Seward follow nearby on horseback, and Mina and Van Helsing start on their way to the castle. Now, I would like to note that nothing of great importance happens on Halloween, October 31st, and I am disappointed. I mean, Stoker has set it up so this book is ending around Halloween, but it doesn't end on Halloween. It's so close, and then it keeps going. Just a few days. Why? Should have just set this in the summer. Why even make it around Halloween if it's not going to end on Halloween? There is no sign of the Count or his boat on the river, but Arthur and Jonathan do talk to some other people traveling, and they believe that they have seen the boat, and the 2 men take turns as they travel, keeping watch. As Seward and Quincy ride along, they get worried about the weather and the incoming snowfall, because that is going to hinder their journey, as well as become hazardous to their health. They also hear that Arthur and Jonathan have had an accident with a boat traveling through rapids, and that has delayed them, but they are now back up and running. Mina and Van Helsing are on the road. Mina admires the view and the countryside as they travel, and she writes that she wishes that it was more of a vacation and she could stop and admire the beautiful views, talk to some of the local people, and hear about their way of life and their customs. But unfortunately, the truth of their journey mars her wonder, and she just worries about how this is all going to end and prays that everybody comes back together and succeeds. And that brings us to the end of chapter 26 and into the final chapter of the book. Mina and Van Helsing continue along in their journey, thankful for the generosity of the people who reside in the countryside that they're traveling through, for food and for shelter. Mina just described one night where they stayed at a house and the people there saw the mark on her head. She couldn't understand what they were saying to her, but she understood the gestures they were making at her. And even, and this is kind of funny, when they had dinner that night, she writes that she thinks that they loaded the food up with garlic as a way to like get at her. And she does say, I can't eat garlic right now. So that kind of sucks. And so from then on, anytime they stay somewhere, she covers up her forehead. As they keep going, the weather gets colder. There are less people and less houses to take shelter in. A couple of days later, you're now reading Van Helsing's account, and he is growing worried because it's come to the point where Mina is sleeping more and more throughout the day. Maybe it's not the vampirism taking over, it's just her being a harker. Not only is she sleeping more, but she's also eating less. She's not writing in her journal, which is very unlike her, and he's also having difficulties hypnotizing her. However, Mina does seem to have this intuition and is able to guide them to the castle. And even though she's sleeping all day, she is pretty bright at night. But Van Helsing does worry when she's sleeping because she looks more alive and better asleep than when she wakes up. And this is, of course, similar to how Lucy seemed to be at the end. This is a slightly frightening part of the book, especially because it is told in Van Helsing's perspective. And just thinking about being alone in a country you've never been in, the countryside of a country you've never been in, with nobody else around you for God knows how many miles, that alone is scary enough. And then you add to that the fact that your companion is slowly turning into a vampire, and you never know when it's going to be the day that she hits that turning point. And it's just you. You have nobody, no backup, can't call for help, can't run anywhere for help. That isolation and potential threat is pretty creepy. But even though he doesn't really like what he's seeing, he admits that they have no choice and they just got to keep going on. And he attributes these changes in Mina to the location. He theorizes that getting closer to Dracula's home is bringing out more vampire habits in her. And then finally they arrive at the castle and they stop outside it for the night. Van Helsing makes a circle around them both using the host wafers, and Mina is unable to cross over it. She's stuck. But the good thing is that, one, that means no other vampires can get to her, and two, if Van Helsing needs to make an escape, he at least has a plan now. In the middle of the night, all the horses start to go mad, and to Van Helsing and Mina's horror, they are joined by the 3 vampire ladies from Dracula's castle. And I wonder what they were doing for like the past 3 months. Like, were they just hanging out? Did they enjoy having the castle to themselves while Dracula was gone? Did they have a house party? Did they redecorate? I'm curious. Van Helsing and Mina stay in their circle, so they are saved. The woman can cross over, but they, of course, still remain on guard. Van Helsing, at one point, makes a move to leave the circle because he wants to use his holy items to, I guess, go out and, like, actually confront the woman and keep them away. But Mina stops him, thank God, because she's like, no. If you cross that circle, they can get you, but they're not going to do anything to me. This doesn't stop the woman from trying to call to Mina and beckon her to come out of the circle and ask her to join them. They're like, you know, let's form a girl squad. To Van Helsing's utter relief, Mina is just repulsed by them and refuses. So that's a good sign that she's not so far gone that she is vulnerable to being drawn to the vampire side. So then it's just a matter of being at a standoff until the morning. Van Helsing and Mina stay awake. The women just stay there, lurking around, being creepy. Once the sun is about to rise, the women have to retreat and they go back. But also, Mina drops asleep. Van Helsing doesn't even have the chance to try and hypnotize her. Also, unfortunately, he realizes that in the night the women had got to their horses, who are now unfortunately dead. Poor horsies. R.I.P. We jump back to Jonathan's journal entries. He is upset because they had been delayed due to the boat accident and remarks that they should have met up with Dracula by now, but they're still just on the trail. We jump to Seward. They're continuing to gallop along, but now not only are they increasingly worried about the snow, which has begun to fall, but also the wolves that are howling nearby. And he writes pretty ominously, "We ride to the death of someone. God alone knows who, or where, or what, or when, or how it may be." Of course, it's just hammers home how up in the air this venture is and how they really have no idea who's going to make it out or not. We go back to Van Helsing's account and he treks up to the castle. He leaves Mina behind because she is asleep and he can't wake her. So he takes the risk of leaving her in the circle. It's such a risky situation. I don't even know what the right course of action would be, because I get that he can't take her with him and he can't go at night when she's awake because when the women are up, like that's 100% a no-go. But there are still wolves in the area. They hear the wolves howling, and not only is she asleep and at risk, but even if she wakes up, she can't leave the circle, so she's just trapped. She can't run from the wolves. But it's a risk he has to take. It says that he uses Jonathan's diary to find his way to the chapel, and I'm wondering if Jonathan only knew how to get to the chapel from climbing down the wall into Dracula's bedroom, going through a secret passage down to the chapel. So did Van Helsing find his way to Jonathan's old bedroom, climb down the wall into Dracula's bedroom, down a secret passageway into the chapel? Because he doesn't describe any of that. He gets there and he finds all three ladies asleep, and he actually hesitates when going to take care of them. He's looking at them and he's like, oh, can I really do these horrific acts to these poor women? And it's like, yeah, bro, you gotta. Especially because they're sleeping, so they don't look threatening at the moment, and so it's just, does he have the strength to do this? But he hears Mina's wail off in the distance, and that spurs him into action. And so he takes care of the three of them. It's gruesome and unnerving, but an unfortunate duty that he has to fulfill. He then finds Dracula's coffin and lays the wafer inside, purifying it, making it so Dracula cannot retreat back to it if he ever gets back to the castle. He then goes back to their camp. Mina is thankfully still there. She's now awake, and they leave the castle area and venture in the direction that they know their companions will be coming from, hoping that they will all meet up together soon to finish the job. We reach our second to last journal entry of the book, told from Mina's perspective. She describes how her and Van Helsing are trudging along. Of course, now they don't have horses, they have no way to ride in a carriage, so it's just gonna be hiking along on foot for them, and how difficult this is. I have to wonder why she's able to now be awake, because it is during the daytime. I guess she can stay awake now. They find shelter in this like little cave thing between two boulders, and that's where they decide to camp out. Van Helsing uses the host again to make a circle to protect their camp. They prepare food, but Mina's unable to eat, and Van Helsing doesn't force her. He knows why. They wait there a while, and then all of a sudden Van Helsing jumps up because he hears something outside, and he looks out and sees a cart in the distance traveling very fast with a box on it, and it is clear that they are racing in the direction of the castle, and it is almost sunset, so they are trying to get there before the sun sets. It is snowing very hard, but he is able to make out Seward and Quincy riding close behind the cart, and also, now on land, Arthur and Jonathan, who are coming from another direction, and it's just amazing timing. I mean, it would have been incredible for them all to come together at the same time, just in general, but the fact that Arthur and Jonathan had a delay with their boat, but they still were able to catch up, wow, amazing. Everybody's converging. Mina describes Van Helsing as being giddy like a schoolboy, and the plan is for them all to surround Dracula's cart. The snow is piling up, the wolves are howling in the distance, and there are also a cart full of men that they're gonna have to deal with. One amusing tidbit is Mina describes one of the men on horseback, I guess carrying the cart, as being like a centaur and very majestic. Everyone meets up, comes together, and surrounds the car. All 6 of our heroes draw weapons, but the men on the cart do the same. And I kind of feel bad for them because I don't know if they know if they're carrying Dracula. I mean, I would assume not. So it's not like they're trying to defend him. They were just given a job to do, and who knows what punishments they would face if they don't fulfill their job. They could lose their jobs, lose their livelihoods. I know our team doesn't really have a choice. I just feel bad for the people who are caught in the middle, you know? Quite amazingly, Mina says that she feels no fear. She is like real hype about all this. Maybe I shouldn't have assigned Jonathan to Hawkeye because he suddenly hulks out. He approaches the cart so aggressively that it intimidates the whole group of men who are protecting it, jumps on top of the cart, lifts up the box with a whole ass Dracula in it, and then throws it overboard. Jonathan Harker has had enough. Quincy fights his way through to help out his good friend Jonathan, wielding a knife, but the men on the cart have knives themselves, and it turns into a knife fight. And then Mina sees Quincy get cut, but she can't tell how bad, and all the madness and the chaos. Seward and Arthur are able to hold the rest of the men back as Jonathan and Quincy pry open the lid to the box. They manage to get it off and get the box open, but now the sun has set. Mina watches in horror as Dracula's eyes turn from hate to triumph. But that little change of expression is all Dracula manages to do, because a moment later, Jonathan Harker takes his head off. At the same time, Quincy stabs him in the heart with a knife. Now, why this works with it being a knife and not a wooden stake? Stoker. I don't know. But all that matters is it works, and Dracula crumbles to dust. Yay! Celebratory candy corn, celebratory candy corn. The men who had been with the cart flee in fear, probably traumatized for the rest of their poor lives. Mina writes that the wolves also retreat. I gotta say, those wolves were useless. Were they even there? All we did was hear them howling. They weren't even a threat. Like, I feel like that's another missed opportunity here, because they could have been like trying to bite them or attack them. That would have been so exciting. They were just howling. Come on, wolves. In the midst of all this joy and celebration, Quincy falls, holding his side that has become very bloody. Everybody rushes to his side, including Mina, who is now able to escape the host circle that Van Helsing had put around them. And Quincy very nobly says to an anguished Mina, "I am only too happy to have been of any service. It was worth this to die." And then he points to her forehead, and all the men look and rejoice because the mark on her head is gone, confirming that she is free of any vampirism and her soul is saved. There in the snow, our dear, sweet, wild card cowboy friend Quincy takes his last breath. R.I.P. Why did it have to be the American who died? Well, they succeeded. That makes me happy. I'm proud that they managed to actually accomplish it. I think they've earned the right to do all hands in again. We're just gonna make it solemn this time. But our story doesn't end there. We actually jump forward in time 7 years later, and this is now Jonathan Harker's observations. Mina and Jonathan have actually had a son. Oh, what would this book be without one final coincidence? And it seems that baby Harker's birthday is actually the day of Quincy's passing. Mina likes to think that some of Quincy's spirit is in their little boy, which is kind of a cute sentiment. Jonathan also writes that his bundle of names links all of our little band of men together, but we call him Quincy. It's really cute. But also, what is this child's actual name? Is it, well, Seward's first name is John, but it's spelled differently than how Jonathan spells his name. So is it Quincy, Jonathan, Arthur, Abraham, Harker? Does he have to fill all of that out and on the Scantron when he takes his SATs? It just seems like a little bit of a mouthful. He also says that one summer, him and Mina actually journeyed back to Romania, specifically the area of Dracula's castle, and they saw it again. Why? I get going to Romania, wanting to actually see the land that I'm sure is very beautiful, and do everything that Mina was saying, that she wanted to do. See the land, talk to the people, experience that part of the world on an actual vacation, and be able to enjoy it. 100% get that. Why they needed to take an excursion to Dracula's castle, a place of torment and trauma, I can't figure out for the life of me. Oh, those kooky Harkers. Arthur and Seward have both married people and are very happy. Everyone still keeps in touch. Jonathan ends this final entry describing how recently everyone came together and read through their papers for the first time in many years, and he remarks that all of it was just their personal accounts. There wasn't anything official, so to speak, and so there's nothing that could prove that everything they went through actually happened. But Van Helsing says they don't need to prove it to anyone, and he says in this last quote, "This boy will someday know what a brave and gallant woman his mother is." True that, A.D. Later on, he will understand how some men so loved her that they did dare much for her sake. And that is the end of the book. I love that it ends on like a final ode to Mina, MVP, champ of the book, but also very sweet. You can't deny that the effort was put in. Could they have made better decisions at certain points? Absolutely. Did they make mistakes? Yes. But I'm confident in saying they all tried the best they can do with what they were working with. In the end, they all succeeded. Some final thoughts. It is interesting to me just how little of Dracula there is in this book for being not just the title character, but being a character that has spawned so many other iterations, not just adaptations, but other authors' books, movies, TV shows, etc. I mean, the first 4 chapters, Dracula's just basically chilling in his home. You see him climb down a castle, sleeping with his eyes open, and we don't see him do anything again until he's just walking around London, and then soon after that when he attacks Mina. And that's the only time we actually get a first-person account of a Dracula attack. Everything else was off the page, or we just see the aftermath of it. It's just interesting to think about how, Dracula is one of the big horror monsters for a character that is so prolific. In his actual book, he doesn't really do much, and you don't even really see him that much. Especially being a threat, group had included more articles or mentions of attacks or situations happening, then that would have been like, oh, this is a big problem. London is teeming with vampires, and we need to stop it. I can't tell if Stoker's intentions were for the stakes to be that big, because the way they talk about Count Dracula as this mythic figure who is very threatening. He's conquered these lands, lived for centuries. He's this big threat to the world, but then his actions in the book don't line up with it. There's nothing wrong with a book with very personal stakes, because the stakes are big to the characters, obviously. Lucy has already died. Mina's now in danger. The stakes are big for them, and that's fine. But then to talk about Dracula as this, major threat to London when he really wasn't. I mean, what did he do? Bit one lady and let some wolves free. He didn't really do anything. I mean, even when they all surround him in his house, he just runs away. There was definitely more talking, describing of scary stuff than actually seeing any of it play out. Definitely a creative story, but certainly plot issues, based pretty much all in plot conveniences. I will say I think Stoker described things very well. He definitely, when you're in the castle or in Carfax, you get a sense of the creepiness. I think he writes first person well. There's a difference in how each person speaks, how their point of views are different. I think there are plot issues, but it's told well. I don't think it's bad writing. I think there is also something to be said about Dracula's pride and how he overestimates himself, because he got pretty unlucky with choosing Lucy to be his victim, because as I mentioned before, all of the coincidences aligning where a guy that already had seen his behavior knew the girl who's best friends with his victim, and also one of the suitors of that victim knows Van Helsing, who knows about vampires. Like, it all just worked against him. But then, honestly, if the night that everyone went to Carfax, if he hadn't attacked Mina and he had just attacked like a random doctor or nurse or other patient besides Renfield, they probably wouldn't have even noticed. Like, ooh, that sucks for them. Maybe like at the most, but because it's Mina, they're going all out. And Dracula purposely stated that he attacked Mina to get revenge. He should have finished the. I don't want to say he should have finished the job, but he wanted to really get revenge. He should have finished the job. You know what I mean? Gives him an even bigger motivation to fight. None of the characters are very deep. They're all kind of just archetypes. Van Helsing is the wise mentor. Seward is the very logic-driven doctor. Mina doesn't get mad or like do anything wrong. Pure of heart, so smart, pretty much just like a perfect ideal woman in the sense of their time period. I don't think that's just because she's a female character that he writes her like that. Nobody is very complex. Quincy is just a wild cowboy. He shoots guns into windows and rides off chasing after things and is always joking around. Arthur doesn't even have a personality. I cannot tell you 3 traits about him. He loves Lucy and he's rich, but that's not like a personality trait. But it was still fun. It makes me laugh, and it's undeniable how much it has inspired and the impact it has had on pop culture. Stage adaptations, as well as countless others in series, Anne Rice and her novels, and of course, many movies, both general vampire movies and also adaptations of this book. Although with a lot of those, I use the term adaptation very loosely. I recommend it as a read. I thank you for joining me along on this journey. It was a good time. It was a good way to spend spooky season. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!